If Guehi signs, could you see us trying three at the back for some games? VVD, Guehi, Canade, pushing Frimpong and Kirkes higher up the pitch. For some games, you never rule out anything. The reason I struggle to see it is when you've got a shortage of centre-backs, and we've got 3 or 4, let's say that. You don't want to be putting 3 out there on the pitch, because if one of those gets injured, you're up shit creek again. So for me, if you ever want to utilise a system where you want to play 3 centre-backs, I would say we need 5 centre-backs at the club. But like you've said, the potential is there with the players that are there. We've not seen any real indication from Arne yet that he will switch to that system, so I'm not expecting it. But certainly if Marc Guehi does sign, he wants to come in and play because it's a World Cup year. Now, what we can say on Marc Guehi at the moment, according to multiple reports, is that he has decided to depart Crystal Palace. So it's either going to be this summer or he runs down his deal and leaves on a free. And there's absolutely no way that I can see Crystal Palace letting him leave on a free. It would be madness for a club like Palace to allow him to leave on a free. They have ambitions to get about 50 million quid from this summer. I can't again tell you what Liverpool are willing to pay because I really don't know. But it does look like if he comes in, he's going to want not assurances of every week playing, but he's going to need to know that he's going to be given an opportunity because he's going to want to go to the World Cup. So again, no manager that I'm aware of will ever guarantee somebody that they're starting every week. But, he's certainly leaning to a Liverpool move from what I can gauge in all the newspapers and from all the journalists. But again, to me, the whole window, from a defensive standpoint, it really just comes down to what happens with Canade. Because Kwanzaa out, Marc Guehi in. I don't think any of us are going to think that's weakening ourselves. But the Canade situation is really important. That's the one for me that will dictate how our defensive setup is going to be in this window, or if we have to do a bit of last minute scurrying around to try and find somebody. And on the Kwanzaa stuff, again, I'm sure you've all seen this, but we've gotten the here we go from Fabrizio Romano. Jarell Kwanzaa to Bayer Leverkusen, here we go. £30 million with 5 million in add-ons. Liverpool have a buyback clause with future control of Kwanzaa should he leave Leverkusen. Now, what do you mean by future control of Kwanzaa? I think he just means option. Liverpool have an option to buy him back and the buyback clause if they want to action it. So that's probably why Liverpool took a reduced fee to the type of numbers they were asking for from Premier League clubs. Maybe they will exercise that buyback clause, but we do now have that confirmation. It's in there from Romano, and the deal encompasses about 35 million all in when the add-ons are taken into account. I don't know anything, Yusuf, about the buyback clause or the dates or times of it, mate. I'm as I said, I've been off the radar for the last couple of days, so I'm playing a bit of catch up here. But all I know is, again, what Romano has said, that the deal is agreed to go to Leverkusen, 30 plus 5 million in add-ons. Personal terms agreed and all that stuff as well. So, and Canade, no idea. My gut feeling on Canade is I don't know if he signs or not. I'm starting to feel more and more fearful that he won't and that Liverpool will sell him. But on that, I read something just before I went live that says Canade promised to Real Madrid. And it reads, Ibrahima Canade is attracting serious interest from Real Madrid, and new manager Xabi Alonso has reportedly been told he can go and get him. But here's where it gets interesting. According to Defensa Central, Perez has promised Alonso that if Liverpool are willing to sell for £26 million, the defender will come to the Santiago Bernabeu. What we're going to gain from this is that Liverpool won't be selling to Real Madrid, because there's no way the club are taking 26 million quid. Not a chance. Liverpool still value Canade with 1 year to go upwards of £40 million. So if Real Madrid want them, they're going to have to up that number significantly if they want to put an offer on the table. What I can't say is whether Canade will sign a new deal with Liverpool or not. Some people are jumping the gun. I've seen some reports that said Canade's frozen contract talks with Liverpool. He's willing to run down his deal. He wants to leave the club. I can't say that any of that is true because I don't know it. But what I do feel is it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks on it, because we can't let this drag on. We need to go into the season knowing that we've got everybody for the season, and they're not going to have another situation like Trent where Canade leaves on a free. So it'll either be new deal or he leaves, but which one of them it is, I don't know. My gut feeling, and it is just that, tells me he leaves, but I hope I'm very much wrong in the way I'm reading this. Can VVD play on the right and Guehi on the left? Absolutely, yes. There's nothing to say that couldn't happen at all, Oliver. Yeah, Marc Guehi absolutely could move onto the left side, right side. We could swap around 100%. But again, for me, the problem comes with what happens with Ibu. That's the headache for me. Guehi, for me, plays every game as he can play, both left and right centre-back. Canade, for that offer, would rot on the bench for me. I don't want to speak badly about Canade. I don't, because I don't know what's going on, and I really don't want to say that, I'd get rid of him or whatever. I told you what I'd do if I was in Liverpool's shoes and he wasn't agreeing to a new deal very clearly. Well, then we're going to have to sell you this summer, or if he pushes to stay at the club, well, you're going to be in the under-21s for the season, mate, because we got to do what we got to do. So for me, I'd play hardball there, but I do hope he stays. I just don't know what's going on in it, and I don't know if anybody does, in all honesty. I've read reports that said the talks pick back up at the end of May with Liverpool and his agent. I've read other things that said that Canade and Liverpool just can't compromise on a number, that they're miles away, and truly just don't know what to believe at the minute. So I'm just kind of waiting and seeing what's going to happen. Colin said, Craig, the fan base will not tolerate another look, not just the fan base, the club will not tolerate another player trying to pull a fast one and run down his deal and go to Real Madrid. If this wasn't the World Cup year or a European Championships year, I think Liverpool would be in a lot more trouble than they are now, because at least we have the carrot of the World Cup for Canade, as if to say, like, you want to play in the World Cup? Well, Didier Deschamps ain't going to pick you if you're not playing week in and week out. And you're not going to play week in and week out if you think you're running down your contract and leaving this club for free. So I'm kind of relieved that there's a tournament on next summer, because if there wasn't, I think we'd be in a far weaker position in what is already, in my opinion, a pretty weak position with Canade. And again, you got to ask, how have we let it get to here? Again, surely we have to learn some lessons around these. At least with Mo and Virgil, you could look at it and think, right, the club are taking their age into account. The club are wondering if the investment is worth it. But Canade, Gakpo, those type of players, they're right in the sweet spot. You don't want to be getting rid of them at this point in their career unless it's a ridiculous offer or the player kicks up before some months to go. A lot of players have left on a free under FSG. Maybe it's just how they work. Yeah, there is that possibility, Liam. Like, I've said this before as well. Like, let's use Luis Diaz as an example, Liam. I think the club may look at Diaz and go, right, he's been with us now for 3 years or whatever length, 3.5 years, whenever it was. He's 2 years to go. He's not on a ridiculous salary. So maybe the club would look at him and go, well, if he leaves in 2 years for free, we've got the value out of him. We can look at that and think between the wages and the fee, okay, fair enough. But as fans, it's always nicer if you see the club bringing in money, isn't it? If you get and see a player moving on, you certainly don't want them moving on for free. And we got very little money for Mane. Bobby obviously left for free. We've seen Henderson go for a small sum as well. Well, actually, his was a bit higher, to be fair. But I agree. We can't keep having players running down their deals and leaving for free. But like you've also said, maybe it is part of the accounting practices of the business model of the club. Wayne said, Craig is right, blackmail Canade. Well, I don't think we have to get into the realms of blackmail now, mate. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. You got to play hardball here. You've got to. It's not nice, but the situation isn't nice. And it can be done in a respectful way. Like, you don't have to be as blunt as I am about this, but you got to let it be known. Like, if you want to be sold this summer, we'll facilitate that for the right fee. But if you think you're running down your contract to leave for nothing to go to Madrid, well, then I hope you don't want to go to the World Cup next summer, because you won't be. That's the way I'd be putting it to him. But again, I want him to stay, and I hope we get a new contract sorted out. But, every day I wake up and I'm hoping for news on that one. I'm hoping that Paul Joyce, Romano, Ornstein, Lynch, any of them, I'm hoping somebody comes up with an information, a bit of story, because I don't know what's going on there. And I got really worried when Canade himself came out and said that the talk from these journalists, who were all top-tier journalists, about the contract being close was bullshit, that it was never close. That kind of freaked me out a little, if I'm being honest with you. It really did. If it was one journalist that reported it, okay, fair enough, maybe they got it wrong, they jumped the gun, something like that. But you got Joyce, Romano, and Ornstein. And there's probably more, but they're the three that I know of. And for all of them to have been wrong, I don't know about that. So something about this just doesn't sit right with me. Canade, his agent, someone is being greedy, insisting for that 200k a week. But see, the thing is about that 200k a week story, right? If that's true, it's not very hard to figure out. Like, Canade says, this is my number. I'm not budging of this number. I want this for my next contract. And if Liverpool say no, then Liverpool say no, and you move on in the process. You start to get to, right, well, respectfully, we want you to stay. We value you. We value you at this number, whatever the number is, let's say 150. But we can't go past that because we don't think... Yeah, so you got to say to him, look, to us, this is fair. If you don't agree with that, no problem. But we'll have to sell you this summer. And you got to go from there.